In a world that moves too fast, this is your invitation to pause, to explore the space between thought and wonder, where science meets story and emotion meets insight. Here, curiosity is more than a question. It's a way of being. You found your corner of calm and contemplation. This is nerdy psychology. Stay curious, be kind, and keep your mind nerdy.
Have you ever noticed how easy it is to start something new and how hard it is to keep it going? You tell yourself, this time's going to be different. You feel motivated. You make the plan. And then something inside of you quietly whispers, you never stick with anything. Why would this time be different? Not in a cruel way, but just in a familiar way. And then suddenly the energy that you had, it fades. And not because you don't want change, but because part of you doesn't even believe it's possible. Today, I want to talk about what happens and how that's not a failure of willpower, but a reflection of identity. Hi, I'm Dr. Angel, and this is Food for Thought Friday, a space where we talk about mental health in a honest, compassionate, and grounded in real life kind of way. This month, we are walking through the book Atomic Habits together, but with a mental health lens to it, because habits do not exist in a vacuum. They exist inside of us with histories and emotions and stress and responsibilities. Today's focus is on identity, those stories we tell ourselves about who we are, and how those stories quietly shape our behaviors. A lot of us think motivation comes first, and then the change follows. But what I see over and over in therapy and in real life is the opposite. We act in ways that match who we believe we are. If you believe, I'm bad at consistency, I'll never follow through, I always mess things up, your brain works overtime to prove that story true. Not because it's accurate, but because it's familiar. It's what you know. Our nervous systems are wired for familiarity, not happiness. So even when we want to change, part of us resists it if it threatens our sense of our familiar identity. Okay, I hear this all the time. I'm just not a disciplined person. I've never been good at routines. I can't stick with anything. And then I sit back and I just gently ask, who says that? Usually that answer traces back to a whole lifetime of small moments. A teacher who labeled them lazy, or a parent who compared them to someone else. A season of burnout that never fully resolved. And over time, these experiences, they turn into our identity. And when you're trying to change, your brain says, wait, stop, red light. That is not who we are. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. One of the most powerful ideas in Atomic Habits is this. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. I'm going to say that again because it's so powerful. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. That means identity isn't something you just declare. It's something you practice, something you live. You don't just become someone who exercises. You become someone who shows up, even imperfectly. You don't become disciplined. You become someone who returns after falling off. Identity is built through repetition, not perfection. And I want to say that again, identity is built through repetition, not perfection. And that's incredibly helpful because it means you don't have to feel ready to start. Okay, let's say your goal is to be someone who takes care of themselves. That doesn't start with a 5 a.m. routine or a 30-day challenge. It starts with things like, I'm going to drink water before coffee. I'm going to take a 5-minute walk. I'm going to turn off my phone 10 minutes earlier. I'm going to say no to one unnecessary obligation. These actions seem small, but they send the message to your brain. I'm someone who shows up for myself. And over time, those messages add up. Okay, I want to tell you a story. And as you listen, I want you to notice what parts of this sounds familiar to you. There was someone I once worked with who had so much potential. It almost hurt to watch him doubt himself. From the outside, you would have thought he had everything going for him: intelligence, creativity, good intentions, good looks. But inside, the story he told himself was very different. He believed he was the mess up, the one who never got it quite right, the one who always started something and then somehow ruined it. And that story followed him everywhere. When he tried to set goals, that voice would show up and say, "Oh, you're not disciplined. You always quit. Why would this time be any different?" And because he believed those thoughts, his behavior followed right along. He'd start something with hope, and then he'd miss a day, and then miss another, and then instead of just adjusting, he would spiral into shame and quit. Not because he was lazy, but because he genuinely believed something was wrong with him. What broke my heart was this: he wasn't failing because he lacked ability. He was stuck because he was living inside an identity shaped by years of disappointment and self-criticism. The shift doesn't come from motivation or discipline. It came when he finally questioned the story he'd been telling himself. He began to notice the words he used intentionally, words he would say to himself like, "I'm lazy," or "I never follow through," or "I always mess things up." And instead of arguing with those thoughts, he got curious. He went on some self-exploration. He started asking, where did I learn this message about myself? Who told me this story? Is it actually true, or is it just something familiar? And that was a turning point, because when you stop treating your inner critic as fact, you create space for something new. He didn't wake up one day suddenly confident or suddenly disciplined or suddenly having it all together. What he did was much quieter and much more powerful. He started making tiny changes that contradicted the old story. Instead of proving he could overhaul his life, he proved that he could show up for himself for 5 minutes. He didn't say, "I'm a failure." He said, "I am learning how to show up for myself again." He stopped waiting to feel confident before acting and let action slowly build confidence. Those small moments began stacking up, and slowly his identity shifted from "I always mess things up" to "I'm someone who keeps going even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's hard." That shift changed everything. So here's what I want you to hear clearly. You do not change by becoming someone new. You change by uncovering who you've been underneath all the fear. I'm going to say that again. You do not change by becoming someone new. You change by uncovering who you've been underneath the fear. Identity isn't something you declare overnight. It's something you practice gently, consistently, and perfectly. And when you start treating yourself with curiosity instead of criticism, your capacity, it grows naturally. So if you've been feeling stuck, if you've been telling yourself a story that keeps you feeling small, I want you to pause and ask, what if that story isn't the truth? It's just a habit. And what might be possible if you begin telling a different story? Not a perfect one, a kinder one. Because the most powerful changes don't come from force. They come from learning to believe that change is allowed, for creating a space for change. Success doesn't have to look loud or dramatic. Sometimes success is not quitting when it gets uncomfortable, or trying again after a hard week, or choosing rest instead of self-punishment. When you define success this way, change becomes sustainable, not exhausting. As you move through this week, I want you to pay attention to the story you have been telling yourself. Not your goals, the story. Ask yourself, what kind of person am I becoming with the small choices I make each day? Next week, we're going to talk about something that holds a lot of people back, environment, and how your surroundings can either support or sabotage your growth. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and join our growing community. If you're interested, I have created a workbook to help you gently build habits, increase self-awareness, and move forward at your own pace. The link is in the description below. Until then, be gentle with yourself. You are allowed to grow at a human pace. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And as always, stay curious, be kind, and keep your mind nerdy. See you next week.
You found your corner of calm and contemplation. This is nerdy psychology. Stay curious, be kind, and keep your mind nerdy.